I'm MichiRose, and I began IFS by being an assistant to Dick in the very first basic training in the mid-1900s, and then I became the very first IFS lead trainer, which means that I trained the basic training independently of Dick. I started IFS as a client, working on my own parts, and I fell in love with the model because it worked for me. I must have had at least zillion years in talk therapy, and it didn't really break through to the deepest level. So I began as a client, but even though I'm a psychotherapist, I wanted to just mention that I also have a PhD in biology. And in biology, you can take neuroblast cells. Those are cells that are going to differentiate into neurons, and put them on a glass slide, and they grow into a little heap, a little mass of cells, a little puddle of cells. Then you can take that glass slide and you etch lines in the glass slide, and you put those same neuroblast cells on them, and they migrate along the grooves and differentiate into neurons. So what IFS has done for me is it's given me grooves for growth. My wish for these students is there is a learning process, and it goes in stages. So in the very first stage, you're kind of learning the dance. You're kind of thinking about it and learning the moves. And as in any discipline, like say skiing, when you start to ski, you fall a lot. So my first wish is that they fall a lot so they can learn their mistakes and just really incorporate that. And then the second stage of learning is that they become competent, consciously competent. It's like when you know the moves of the dance and you can just do them very competently. But then there's a third stage, and this is my wish for people in the training. The third stage is that they move into being danced by the dance. So instead of them dancing, they're being danced. In sports, you would call it being in the zone. Right. And in IFS, we call it being in self-leadership. And there's an ease and a naturalness and a intuitive knowing that comes with being in the flow of being in self-leadership. Well, my wish and hope is that they would say, I am training by coming from qualities of self-leadership, such as clear, concise, compassionate, creative, holding community, and I have a good balance of head and heart. Well, for me personally, experience is everything. You just don't learn to ski without getting on the slopes. And so, in the context of a very safe environment, with the presence of assistant trainers, there is lots of practice as a therapist, and there is a lot of practice as client. So in my trainings, there's that extensive experience on both sides of the coin, which I believe leads to, you can have, the question can be, how do you know IFS is effective? And there can be gobs of research, but when you experience it yourself as the therapist and see marked improvements in your clients, and when you yourself are a client and feel the profound depths that it can take you to, that's when I think the truth of the beauty of the model really hits home. It's a great investment. I mean, what greater investment is there than to really find the depths of who you are and help other people to that same place of discovering who they are. It has really helped my practice profoundly because I'm more in myself. And if you come to the training, you'll totally understand. It's every training and every model has a little bit of jargon. So being the self just means that you really are in balance, in harmony, that there's a wholeness, and there is an ease to life. So it's helped me immensely. So I believe IFS is a one-size-fits-all model. And it doesn't matter whether you're a psychotherapist, or you're a clergy, or you're talking to the board in the boardroom, or you're just being a good parent. It really is profoundly helpful to be your true self. When my kid was little and I hadn't gotten enough sleep and he did something that was noisy and irritating, I could either feel myself be really irritated, or I could say calm, centered, compassionate, with a broader perspective and understanding, and deal from that place rather than from my irritated place. So it's about staying in balance and harmony internally, no matter what comes down the road at you, and there is always something. There is always a new life challenge coming around the corner. And I was good at just supportive listening, but it didn't reach to the depths of where the healing needed to happen. Who is a person? A person is mind, body, and spirit. A person is the totality of all three of those: head, heart, and kind of groundedness in the gut. And IFS is able to speak to all three levels and unifiedly communicate with issues on all three levels, which is really a profound advantage in healing. I'll tell you where my aha moment was. After years of myself being a client in talk therapy, when I experienced IFS as a client, that was my aha moment. That was like, when the hounds start to chase the fox. I was on the scent and I was into the chase, and I haven't stopped. It's because it profoundly worked for me. I would say the greatest gift that IFS has brought to me, I believe everyone wants to be themselves. Everyone wants to be their true self. I believe that the question is how? How do you do that? And the gift that IFS provides is a way. I've always had the question, who am I? And it's really lovely to know that I'm not my anxious part, yes, and I'm not my angry part, and I'm not my confused part. It's just a delight to have a concept of self that really works for me and a way to get there, a method. This model, the IFS model, is very simple, but it is not easy. Do you know, sometimes the most profound things like E equals MC squared seems like profoundly simple, but it's not easy to work that. So there are pieces of the model that only experience, real practice. It's like, when I went to a physical trainer for just toning up my body, they suggested that I do it through a trainer so that I could learn the correct way to use my muscles and not develop bad habits. Doesn't mean I couldn't jump on the machine, but it was with the help of a trainer, a skilled trainer, that I was able to learn how to best do it correctly and work the muscles just the way they needed to be worked and stretch my muscles just the way they needed to be stretched. And it's not any different with IFS and learning it through a basic training. The question is, where's the healing relationship? And in traditional studies, the healing relationship is between the therapist and the client. That's an interpersonal relationship. The profound difference with IFS is that the healing relationship is within the client, him or herself, between the client's self and part. And again, people might not understand that jargon, but it is very important to know that the healing relationship is within oneself. It's with the parts of oneself. And that totally changes the nature of the therapy. I don't know if it's okay to mention other therapies, but, I have studied some other therapies that were much more cookie cutter. You would say, and now what do you do? And it was just a formula. There is incredible aliveness, organic, natural, creative flow in the process with IFS, and I love that creativity because it keeps me fresh and it helps the client stay fresh, and if we're both in self, it just organically unfolds. Before I did IFS, I think I'm very bright and I was very insightful and I helped people and I was very good as a supportive listener. But there was a place I didn't know how to take clients safely. I did not know how to be respectful of their defenses in a way that honored them and acknowledged them and valued them and allowed us, without efforting, to just be present with the underlying taproot. I was like clipping off the little daisies, but then the roots would split out. So it was just really so profoundly gratifying to have a method to go down deep to the taproot and to help people shift the taproot because the consequences were profound. there had been times before when I would sit with a client and I would start to feel like my batteries were being drained. You know, a part would come up, a caretaker part or a worried part or a judgmental part. And it was work. And the wonderful thing about IFS is it has a concept and a method. The concept is being in self-leadership, and the method is what you learn in the basic training. And when you put these two together and you are a therapist with a client, it becomes, there is an intuitive, organic presence and opening. It's really like when you play the music, only you're not there cognitively playing the instrument, the music's coming and playing you. And there is such a pleasure, and it's recharging my batteries to be a therapist with IFS. And it's such a pleasure to have found a model that does that, because otherwise, to be quite honest, I might have been burnt out.